S10 Plus base model, iPhone XS Max, Huawei Mate 20 Pro, which is the current king, then we've got the OnePlus 6T and the Galaxy Note 9 from last year to see how much of an improvement we've made. And right now I'm just basically downloading all the same apps on the phones and setting them to the exact same brightness using a luxometer, and also making sure that they've got Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth on, NFC on, and location on, but everything else off. Okay, so I've just removed the cables from all the phones, so batteries have started to drain. And to start with, I've pulled up YouTube and we're watching some of the more recent Mr. Who's the Boss coverage on the Galaxy S10. And we're just going to let it play for 20 minutes, half an hour, and see what happens. So a couple of things to note. First of all, these phones are not set to all maximum brightness. They're set to an identical level because different phones have different maximum levels of brightness, and I think it's fair to compare what would be an equivalent experience. The phones may look like they're at a different brightness level, or the colors might look a little distorted, but that's because each phone has a slightly different angle to the camera. Alright, after a pretty heavy YouTube session, the iPhone is currently on top, and the rest of the phones sort of bundled together in a pack, with the OnePlus 6T kind of straddling behind. I've now pulled up Tumblr, and in this video I'm trying to simulate a more realistic usage case. I think a lot of battery tests, and something that I used to do a lot, is just run benchmark after benchmark, but a lot of you guys wanted me to spend more time on social medias and the things you'd actually be using, so you get a realistic idea of what your battery life would be. If you take a quick look at the specs at the bottom, you'll notice that the Mate 20 Pro has the largest battery of the bunch, with the S10 Plus and the Note 9 pretty closely behind. The iPhone has by far the smallest battery, but at the same time it's running the latest iOS 12.1.4, and iOS generally is quite efficient at handling limited battery capacities, so we'll see how it compares. Okay, we've spent about an hour and a half on social media, so we're now going to move on to something a little bit more intensive. The application you're seeing is called Atomus. It's kind of like an intense particle simulator, so yeah, that'll push the phones a little bit more. Now, when you're looking at the specs at the bottom, you might also notice the display resolutions, and this is always a bit of a tricky topic. So the Galaxy S10 Plus, Mate 20 Pro and the Note 9 all have Quad HD Plus displays, but simply because a lot of people can't tell the difference, by default they'll come loaded with a full HD Plus setting. So I think the fairest way of testing it is to use this, because that is what 95% of people will have the phones on, and also it's going to show you what the battery life is like whilst providing an equivalent viewing experience to the OnePlus 6T, which can't go any higher than 1080p. You might have noticed the results starting to shift in favour of the S10 Plus and the Mate 20 Pro, which kind of makes sense. These are the two most recent devices, and are also two of the most efficient devices because of the chipset they're running on. The S10 Plus I have here is an Exynos-based version, which means it's running on an 8nm chipset, and the Mate 20 Pro has the Kirin 980, based on a 7nm process. Essentially, the smaller this number gets, the more power you can pack into a device that actually consumes less. Bear in mind the iPhone's A12 Bionic chip is also based off an efficient 7nm process, but it's probably falling behind just because its battery is that much smaller. Just before we carry on, I want to mention that I've launched a big Galaxy S10 giveaway with everything Apple Pro. We're giving away 5 devices, so if you want to find out about that, link is in the description below. Okay, for a temporary hiatus on the intensive applications, we are on Instagram, which, if you're anything like me, is 20% of your time spent on your phone. So we're going to run this for about 40 minutes and then switch on to the next thing. And I actually just want to use this as an opportunity to answer one of the most asked questions in the last battery test. Batteries degrade over time as you use them. So if, for example, I was using the device I use on a day-to-day basis as one of the phones in this test, it'd be giving you a skewed result. It would perform poorer than a device that you'd just taken out of the box. So a lot of you are asking, do I use the same device? Is the Mate 20 Pro you're seeing in this test the phone I use day to day? The answer is no. So all 5 phones that are being tested here are phones that I've reserved for battery testing only, so they've had less than 10 charging cycles on them. So it should give you a pretty representative result. The Galaxy S10 Plus is doing really well. In fact, it's even pulled quite significantly ahead of the Mate 20 Pro, and if it beats that phone, that's going to be something to celebrate, because that phone is incredible for battery life. Don't get me wrong, the S10 Plus's battery capacity is very good, but that can't be the full story here, because otherwise it wouldn't be beating the Mate 20 Pro. And my suspicion is that this has something to do with One UI. One UI is Samsung's completely redesigned software skin, and to be honest, just using it feels lighter. There's fewer menus, there's less bloatware included. This might be why the battery is doing so well, and this would also go a long way to explaining the Note 9's result. So now the Note 9 is way ahead of the iPhone and a fair bit ahead of the OnePlus 6T as well, and this wasn't always the case. And funnily enough, the Note 9 I'm using actually got given the update this morning, literally just before I started filming. So convenient timing, but also that could definitely explain this vastly improved performance. Alright, things are heating up. 2 of the phones are now on single digits, so we're on YouTube, looking through my videos as always, and we're just going to see which one tanks first. Either way though, this is a close battle. Not to mention one where I'd say all the phones are doing really well. In fact, there's no phone on here which I'd say has anything less than a good battery life. I didn't mention this earlier, but halfway through the battery test I actually turned the torches on for each phone. So they're firing into the table underneath right now, but that means that even the result you get on this test, even the 6 hours plus that all of these phones have lasted, even that is a slight underestimation of what you could expect. Okay, the iPhone was actually the first one to finish, and it lost its last few percentage points really quickly, which is actually a common thing that iPhone users complain about. And pretty incredible to note that at the same time the S10 Plus is still on 19%. That's unheard of, I think, in any test I've ever done. And to emphasize, the takeaway here shouldn't be that the iPhone XS Max has lost and sucks at battery life. It's actually done really well. Bear in mind that it's got not only the largest display, but also the highest resolution on show right now. And considering that its capacity is so small, I think it's done really well to last this long. Fast forward a bit, and only the S10 Plus remains. Last man standing, so we're going to let YouTube run for a little bit, fully accelerate this process so you don't have to just literally watch it going down, and then pull open a game just to finish it off. Alright, so the end results, and I would say I'm surprised. I'd nearly go as far to say I'm shocked at what we actually ended up seeing. In 5th place was the iPhone XS Max at 6 hours and 11 minutes. Good performance, and a lot better than the standard iPhone XS. We then have the OnePlus 6T, not much longer, at 6 hours and 16. This phone really benefits from the extra 400 mAh of capacity that OnePlus added over the OnePlus 6. I'm impressed with the Note 9. It lasted a good 25 minutes longer than the OnePlus 6T at 6 hours and 41. And we already know the Mate 20 Pro is an absolute battery life monster, so it's not a surprise that this came in 2nd place, but only lasted about 6 minutes longer than the Note 9 at 6 hours and 47. And that leaves the S10 Plus with a staggering 7 hour 30 minutes of screen on time. And don't forget, this was a way more intensive test than an average realistic use case scenario, so I'm floored. This is incredible battery life performance, and we're yet to see how it holds up over time, but the future looks pretty bright.